Darth Vader, the Joker, Blofeld, Lord Voldemort. Iconic movie villains everyone knows of, even if they haven't seen the movies these characters have appeared in. However, there are plenty of great movie villains who sadly never get any attention. That's what this series is for. Like I've done for countless comic book villains, I will now do for movie villains. Shine the spotlight on the ones who so desperately need it. We start off this series with a villain, oddly enough, played by a guy usually known for playing the hero. It's Jean Claude Van Damme as Xander in 2013's Enemies Closer. Enemies Closer is an action movie directed by Peter Hyams, the same man who directed two of Van Damme's classic 90s movies, Time Cop and Sudden Death. It stars Tom Everett Scott as the hero, a former Navy SEAL who's now a park ranger by the US-Canadian border. Xander, a French-Canadian mercenary and former military man himself, has lost a shipment of cocaine in the area when the plane transporting it crashed into a lake. Naturally, the criminal desperately wants his drugs back, and the only one who stands in his way is the former Navy SEAL park ranger. And that's basically it. A typical cheesy 80s or 90s action movie plot. There's also an important subplot involving a character played by Orlando Jones. Jones's younger brother was a Navy SEAL who served under Scott's command. He died in combat though, and Jones has got it in his head that Scott is responsible. So he comes to the US-Canadian border to get revenge on Scott. The two end up teaming up instead though, in order to take down Xander. Hence the title Enemies Closer. I'm not going to get into that plot point though, I'm here to talk about Xander. And he is, as a matter of fact, the only part of the movie worth talking about. If it wasn't for him, Enemies Closer would have been completely forgettable.
Hey, I'm the guy with the gun.
And I'm the guy with the guy.
It's a very bland and generic action flick, and Tom Everett Scott was a very poor choice as the hero. He's got zero charisma and none of the cool action qualities required by an action star. The movie is overall also pretty cheap looking, which isn't surprising as it was made on a budget of only $5 million. It has the look and feel of a direct-to-video movie, and in fact it was released direct-to-video in all countries except for the United States. Now, it's not best of the worst bad quality. It's not Russian Terminator. It's certainly watchable, but it's not a very impressive or inventive action flick. It's by the numbers and bare bones. However, I still highly recommend it, but only for Jean Claude Van Damme's villain role.
Bring that fire.
I like the sight of you, Henry.
Xander is a very odd duck with some pretty strange priorities. He kills people left and right without a second thought. Clearly, human life means nothing to him. However, he does care greatly for animals and the environment. He keeps going on about pollution in the movie. He won't even allow his henchmen drive a car as it pollutes the environment, forcing them to ride horses instead. He also never uses guns, and in fact explains that he hates guns. This vicious killer hates guns. According to him, guns also cause pollution. I'm not sure if that's really true, but Xander believes it in any way, and it's pretty hilarious. He thus resorts to using only knives, and he sure does seem to love his knives. He does begrudgingly allow his henchmen the use of guns though. Xander is also vegan. Figures. He only eats organic fruits and vegetables. He's also a bit of a nature freak, and after doing some killing, he likes going out picking strawberries.
The wild strawberry. I wasn't aware you grew in these parts.
At one point in the movie, he explains his background to one of his victims, right before shoving a knife into his chest. When Xander was a kid, his best friend was a goose named Edith, named after French singer Edith Piaf. Yep, his best friend was a goose.
I truly love that goose.
Everyone in his family thought it was hilarious, and to play a cruel prank on him, his grandmother cooked the goose and without him knowing, fed it to him. After he'd finished his dinner, the grandmother asked, "How did Edith taste?" Xander was naturally traumatized by the experience. He later killed his grandmother. So yeah, that's the backstory to this Looney Tune. A truly bizarre character. He also has a hilarious sense of sarcastic humor.
Well, now you deal drugs and kill people.
It's so true. Where did I go wrong, huh?
What truly makes this character though is Van Damme's performance. You could have played Xander straight and I guess it might have worked, but I sure am glad that Van Damme didn't. Van Damme isn't exactly known for outrageous performances. He's usually a pretty emotionless blank in his roles, but here he goes in the extreme opposite. Van Damme chews the scenery like Xander would chew a piece of organic lettuce.
Oh, we get to plant trees.
I've never seen him like this before, and I gotta say I was completely shocked when I first saw the movie. I had no idea he was capable of this kind of performance. He just completely lets loose. It's not a bad type of over-the-top though, like Uma's Poison Ivy for instance. No, it's an incredibly entertaining type of over-the-top. The right type of over-the-top. It perfectly fits the character too, as he is completely nuts after all. Like I said, I suppose you could have played it straight, and it could have been fine, but it would have been nowhere near as memorable or entertaining. Now this is a giant spoiler, but for a perfect example, check out Xander's death scene.
Fucking gasoline. I knew it would ruin everything.
Easily one of the greatest villain death scenes in movie history. So, to conclude this video, Enemies Closer is a bland, mediocre action flick that is completely saved by an outstanding and utterly nuts villain. And of course Van Damme deserves a lot of that credit. You seriously need to watch this movie just for Van Damme. There's tons of great bits that I of course didn't include in this video. Basically every single scene with Xander is pure gold, and every line delivery of his a work of art. Thank you Van Damme for this outstandingly insane performance. And of course, let's not forget to mention that weird hair of his. Yeah, I have no idea what's going on with Van Damme's hair in this movie, but it's great. Anyway, as always, remember, Arkham Asylum awaits you in the next video.